Hey everybody, this is Kohdok here, and while I know we usually talk more about toys, cards, and games on this channel, today we're actually going to be talking about a magazine. Specifically, Warhammer 40k Imperium magazine. I love magazines that come with little bonus activities like craft projects inside of them. Reminds me of the bygone era of gaming magazines that included sample cards, demo discs, or even entire game decks inside of them to feel a new game with your own hands, and Imperium is probably the best of those that we have right now. Though for cards we have to give it up to White Dwarf magazine, though that's made by the same company, so Warhammer 40,000, or Warhammer 40k as it's usually known, is a miniatures war game that takes place in the super distant future. The golden age of mankind saw humanity spread over all reaches of the galaxy, but a combination of wonky artificial intelligence, hostile alien races, and strange temporal phenomena triggered a societal collapse called the Age of Strife. Millennia later, a warlord calling himself the Emperor ran a brutal reconquista to unite all of humanity under a single banner once more, only to be betrayed by half of his legions, led by his own son Horus, who had signed a pact with the literal, actual devil, crippling the Emperor and confining him to his golden throne, forever shattering galactic peace and stagnating progress for thousands of years as mankind struggles to hold itself together. Welcome to grimdark fantasy. Okay, yeah, I know how all of that sounded, but in reality, Warhammer 40k is more of a hodgepodge of science fiction and fantasy tropes, complete with techno-wizards and space elves, and with army men colored like football teams fighting legions of alien xenomorphs and robot terminators. I find that so many people get lost in the weeds fixating on the minutia and strange lore that they forget that this is supposed to be fun. I mean, given the choice between a brand new AAA video game and a set of 10 plastic army men, these folks somehow decide to go for the latter, so it better be fun.
I passed on Elden Ring for you!
Yeah, Warhammer is a notoriously expensive hobby, to the point that many of its direct competitors like Drop Zone Commander and War Machine can be viable simply on the merits of being cheaper. And that's largely where Imperium comes into play to try to close that gap. Inside these $14 issues, you tend to get half of to all of one of the sprues from these $30 to $60 kits, and that monster discount on its own is enough for many to sing the praises of a subscription, despite the roughly $60 monthly price tag, which puts it above a lot of subscription boxes. But I wanted to come at this from the perspective of somebody who hasn't touched the hobby in well over 15 years and try to describe the experience of Imperium magazine. Yeah, though I dabbled in miniature games in my youth, the scant few Warhammer models I had has since dwindled down to zero. So this for me was a fresh start, and let me tell you, a half-price introductory issue that comes with not one, but 2 command units is quite the first impression. Inside the magazines themselves, you get a combination of lore pages, building instructions, painting tips, and even a playable scenario using the miniatures you have acquired thus far. They also frequently include additional supplies like dice, paints, rulers, and even battle mats. The first box, or 3 issues if you subscribe, runs you about $20 plus shipping, and includes a command unit and a partial set of light infantry for the Space Marine and Necron armies, along with some gaming supplies, a pair of base paints, and a brush. Painting is actually a pretty big part of the hobby. Some people tend to spend more of their time painting and customizing than they do getting ready to play the game, and the level of craft that can come out of these can range from dazzling to fridge-worthy. And a lot of my paint jobs have ended up on the fridge. For reference, this is the most recent miniature I painted before Imperium, looking less like jungle camouflage and more like a part of the jungle itself. These light infantry sprues are actually push-fit miniatures that come directly from the painting starter kits Games Workshop sells themselves for like 20 bucks. So all you gotta do is snip out the minis, put them together, whip out your brush, thin a dollop of paint with a drop of water, and start painting. Now, I'm sure a lot of you are screaming the same thing right now.
Hold on there, Cupcake! You need to prime that first!
I know, right? I thought so too. Fact is, paint does not adhere well to plastic or metal, so it's recommended that you first dust the miniatures with a thin coat of spray primer, usually either your base color or some sort of grayscale tone, onto which normal paint adheres more readily. However, Imperium isn't exactly shipping with big ol' cans of spray primer in their issues, so instead, issue 2 offers us an alternative method. After washing off the mold release chemical with a bit of soap and water, you instead sort of stretch and pull a super thin base coat over the surface of the miniature, leaving a sort of watery looking first coat. And yeah, I think this is supposed to be how we prime these models. And after applying 2 more super thin coats, we get a very robust color. As somebody whose big ham hands have always screwed up spray can priming, leaving these big ol' cakey bits of nonsense, I am astounded at how immaculate this method leaves the details, and I have to say, I am sold. Rather than skipping a step, it feels more like the choice between sculpting clay and using a pour mold. One method certainly takes a lot more time, but the results are a lot easier for me to control. The idea behind this is that you will, over time, get more paints which involve painting procedures that are steadily more and more demanding. Something this basic brush honestly isn't up to the challenge of doing, especially since mine has a permanently warped tip due to shipping in the magazine without a protector, but a cheap long bristle fine brush will help with the smaller details, and even this basic brush can still be used for base coats and other things. Not sure how it will be with other paint brands, but the Citadel base paints seem to have pretty solid adhesion to the plastic. Which you'd assume they would, I mean they're by the same company. A quick aside, I do want to talk about this base painting grip and the bad rap I feel it has. I mean, lots of people say to just use a hunk of wood with glue on the end, but how many of those can get away with this? Yeah, when I started using this grip, I instinctually rolled it upside down in my hand to get at the underside details before realizing this was a deliberate feature. The rounded bulb nests nicely in my fingers, and the clip style means that it won't fall victim to the forces of gravity or leave behind any residue. I do wish it could handle bases larger than 40mm and had a release lever I could operate with my thumb, but you get what you get. Although speaking of thumbs, whenever I see somebody using a hobby knife to carve away mold flash and sprue and bump the blade into their fingers, I'm always all, ow! 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 Please, for the love of Pete, get yourself some of these. They're called rubber thimbles or thumb stalls, they're sold at most craft and office supply stores, and they save you a ton of heartbreak. Moving on! Once you get through the second month, issues 4 through 8, each army also gains a full unit of heavy infantry and a leadership unit, along with a nice suite of staple paint colors: black, white, gray, gold, silver, bronze, and blue. Issue 4 is probably the best value out of any issues aside from the first one, as not only do you get a full squad of Scorpec heavy infantry, you also get the always useful lead belcher metallic paint and a full-size battle mat. Well, at least full size for Kill Team. Still, the first 2 packs are absolutely worth it, even for a casual fan, and it's easy to order the other issues ahead of time if you know where to look. The magazine has been out in the UK for several months now, so it's easy to peek ahead and see what you want from future issues. Add in a couple more months, and both armies get a Psyker and a full spread of light infantry, more than enough for some solid play. But things do start to taper after this, with issues packing only 2 paint pots rather than 3, or packing terrain pieces and more partial sprues, with no vehicles appearing before issue 32. Sure, you'll have a pair of 2,000 plus point armies by the end of the run, but at $60 a month for nearly 2 years, be sure you're ready to drop serious dough on this if you really want to. That said, this is not the first time Games Workshop has made this kind of magazine. Games Workshop, for all of the guff that they get, especially with how their treatment of fan projects is concerned, often go out of their way to make community spaces for people to play, with their own set of first-party stores where folks can go to play a game or use their painting workstations and just hang out. Heck, if you've never played, they'll demo the game for you and even give you a little miniature on a sprue to put together in Paint, amongst other things. And yeah, I know it's another aside, but Games Workshop, do you think you could maybe please directly sell single light infantry minis like this for every faction, so it's easy for folks to test their paint schemes without having to pay too much? Just asking. Warhammer stores are great! They often have little projects and community outreach activities, and it reminded me of the fun factor you're meant to approach the hobby with, as during my visit there, I watched as a 13-year-old kid used his birthday money to buy a starter set of Kill Team, and his little brother, who couldn't have been older than 10, nabbing up the last box of Gene Stealers in the whole store, showing that sort of young enthusiasm so many hobbies seem bereft of these days. Still, if their prior successes are any indication, these magazines won't be ending anytime soon, and I hope it inspires other games to maybe generate a similar sort of curated introduction to their games that doesn't overwhelm with big collections and massive price tags, and I look forward to what could lie in the future. That said, I'm probably going to stick to nabbing the Space Marine issues for now, and for any of you who call me basic for playing Space Marines, my old army was Tyranids. I plan on making a Salamander successor chapter. Lore says the Salamanders put a lot of effort into humanitarian aid whenever war breaks out, and I like the cut of that jib. Maybe I'll do a video about what I come up with if people are interested. I also really need to do a video about Drop Zone Commander. They sent me a starter set years ago, and I never published the review I filmed about it, not because I didn't like the game, in fact I think it's great, but because I felt my video was inadequate. Hope we can still be friends. Anyway, that was the Warhammer 40k Imperium magazine. A bold move that I hope other games will follow in the footsteps of, and until next time, this is Kohdok signing off.